This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Oh, Jimmy G is the conversation today. His name is Greg Bedard. I'm Nick Cattles, pod number 59. Let's get into it, Greg. We've been talking about Jimmy Garoppolo for, it feels like, I don't know, ever since he left a few years ago. And you had said going back a couple of weeks ago that, you know, it was like he was riding off into the distance and Belichick was kind of waving goodbye and hoping somehow, some way he'd be able to see his guy again. Well, here we are. San Francisco makes the huge trade last Friday. Over the weekend, we've had time to absorb it. What was Jimmy G's reaction, first of all, Greg, to this deal?
It wasn't good. Not only what Kyle Shanahan said in his press conference yesterday, but I had heard over the weekend that Jimmy was disappointed, that he was not thrilled with what happened. But here's the thing, and these things can evolve, and this could have been in the immediate wake of the trade. What I heard was that he was disappointed, but he understood. And which me, as a person who wants to see the Patriots get better at the quarterback position, I was disappointed in that. That was his reaction. And I could tell you this, Nick, and this will be an evolving conversation, and we'll go in a bunch of different areas on this. But from where the Patriots are, they understand the situation. They understand that San Francisco can do whatever they want. But really, it comes down to everybody wants to know, what does Jimmy want? It all comes down to that, Nick. And we could talk about all these things all we want. What do the 49ers want? What do the Patriots want? Really, it comes down to what Jimmy wants. And if Jimmy doesn't react the right way, then the Patriots might just be like, forget it. It's over. The questions that we've had about this kid around him a little bit with his toughness and things like that, this is further evidence of some of that stuff. And maybe we don't want to be involved with him. Maybe we don't think he was the person and competitor that he was. So it's going, I think where the Patriots are on whether they want him, whether they want to go get him, put any sort of capital towards getting him, Nick, is all predicated on how does Garoppolo react to this? How does Garoppolo and his agent, Don Yee, who is also Tom Brady's agent, how do they react to this and what do they do? Because they have all the power in this scenario. People could say, well, Jimmy doesn't have any leverage and things like that. He does. He's made $89 million in his career. He could sit out if he wants to. He can look at the situation, and we'll talk about similar situations, the Alex Smiths and what have you. But he has the power. He's made $89 million. He does not have to make his salary this year. He could say, no, you just traded basically our next 2 years, 3 years worth of high echelon players to get a quarterback because you don't believe in me, but you want me here to help you win a Super Bowl. Like most people would react and be like, screw you. Go with your guy. And I'm going to go someplace else where I know the offense, where I know they're wanted, where I know, hey, and you could probably say out the door, and who's a better coach and who doesn't choke away Super Bowls, whether it's as an offensive coordinator or as a head coach. I'm going someplace else. Screw you. But we don't know. We don't know what Jimmy's going to do. It's up to Jimmy.
I had a very smart advisor one time tell me, if you're unhappy where you work, the employer eventually is going to want to get rid of you, right? Like, no matter how talented you are, if you are unhappy at what you are doing, then the employer at some point is going to say, okay, well, you're unhappy. We don't want somebody unhappy in the building. We don't want somebody unhappy being the quarterback of this team and trying to lead us on the field on Sundays. If you're truly unhappy, Jimmy, we will do what we have to do to move you to another spot where you will be happy and you have a chance to be the quarterback, not just this season, but long term. I agree with you. If Garoppolo is not happy, if he walks into that front office, if he talks to Lynch and Shanahan and says, I want out, I'm not going to, as you put it on Twitter a number of times over the past few days, I'm not willing to be the caddy here. I'm going to move on with my career. I think I can be a number one guy. You guys obviously don't agree with that. And I'm not going to sit here and keep the seat warm. I'm going to
Yep.
move on and go somewhere else. If Garoppolo demands that, San Francisco will give in. I mean, the financial aspect of this alone is enough to move Jimmy. If Jimmy
Yes.
walks in and demands it, he will be traded. And then let's not forget, Greg, he also has a no trade clause. So not only could he walk in and demand a trade, he could then direct San Francisco to where he wants to go, which takes the leverage out of San Francisco's hands. So Garoppolo does have the leverage here. Let me ask you this. I read all this stuff, and it's funny. People buy into what Shanahan is saying as some kind of gospel, which is, I
Yep.
mean, you got to be kidding me. He's been telling us for the last year plus that Jimmy G is his guy and they love him. And then look what happens when they have an opportunity to ship a bunch of picks out of town to move up to 3 to draft the next guy. That's what they do. It's rather obvious that San Francisco's been giving us a pile of crap when it comes to Jimmy and his future in the Bay Area. But there's media people out there who are, I think, doing business for San Francisco and trying to help San Francisco build the trade value of Garoppolo. How does all of that play into it, Greg?
Yeah, look, I think it's a factor. I think you have people out there, and look, I'm not going to be, passive aggressive, and he knows I love him, and we all have our disagreements and things like that. But look, Albert Breer is one of the prominent people out there telling people, basically like what. And look, let's just say this from the outset: Bert might be right at the end of the day. Okay, he might be right that the San Francisco 49ers over their dead body don't trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, good luck with that and see how that works. But look, Bert's out there telling people that the San Francisco 49ers think, or at least he thinks, or what have you, that they're Super Bowl contenders this year. And why would they trade Jimmy? First of all, I'm not sure that they're a Super Bowl contender, especially in that division.
Yeah.
With what the Rams just did, what the Cardinals have been doing, the Seahawks are still there. I mean, you're talking about the San Francisco 49ers, and yes, they had terrible injury issues last year between Garoppolo, Bosa, other people. I get it. They were last place. They were 6-10. What's funny about this whole thing, Nick, is so the San Francisco 49ers they were 6-10 last year without Jimmy Garoppolo. So they think that Jimmy Garoppolo is a Super Bowl quarterback and he's the difference. He puts them over the top. Like if he's back and other people are back, suddenly now they're at least 10-6 or even better with Jimmy. But they just traded a crap load to get his replacement. Like I just don't understand the doublespeak that's going on. But look, at the end of the day, I don't know what the media narratives how they're going to come out and things like that. But I just think sometimes, and I've been in the middle of it before in my career, where I'm not saying that people are being used and things like that, because I believe Bert's a smart guy. He believes what he believes. Yes, he has great sources out there in San Francisco. I don't think he's peddling for them. I think he believes a lot of this, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, you have to look at it and be like, all right, but what's the truth? What's more towards the truth? And what's more towards the truth, Nick, to me is this is Kyle Shanahan. People have to remember he went 6-10 last year. His only winning season as a head coach is when they went to the Super Bowl. Right now, that's the outlier. He has 3 losing seasons beyond that. If it doesn't come together this year, if he has another losing season, he will have 4 losing seasons in 5 years. Which one's the outlier? Dan Quinn, who he worked for in Atlanta, got fired in the middle of his 3rd losing season. So 2.5 losing seasons. Shanahan would have 4. There are people around the league, Nick, who think that Shanahan, if he does not win this year, he could be in danger. And what you've seen here is, in my opinion, it's Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch borrowing from different parts of How Do I Not Get Fired playbook. Okay. They're basically covering their ass with Jimmy Garoppolo. And the sooner that Jimmy wakes up to this and realizes what's going on, the better it is for him. But Shanahan and Lynch want to have it both ways. They want to be able to say, okay, well, we have the veteran guy who we know went to the Super Bowl, but we really don't. And so we're going to try to hang on to him. But we're going to trade. We don't believe in him. We don't think he's talented enough. We don't think he's going to stay healthy enough. So we're going to trade 3 first-round picks to get his replacement. And we're going to go that route, which is the playbook is draft a young quarterback and you get a few more years because you sell the owner on we need to trade up, we need to do this, we need a young quarterback, blah, blah, blah. So Shanahan's trying to have it both ways. He thinks Jimmy gets him at least off to a good start to the young kids ready, and then he has the young kid to buy him a few more years. It's just they're going down 2 different paths, and anybody who brings up Alex Smith, the other scenarios, there's the Alex Smith scenario, but there's also scenarios with when they talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, they're like, oh, well, Carson Wentz, everybody was down on Carson Wentz because he didn't want to compete. Everybody was down on, there was somebody else who didn't want to compete, who wanted to get traded. Oh, well, Tom Brady didn't do this when Jimmy Garoppolo was drafted. They're all completely different situations, which we can get into. But the main thing is Shanahan's trying to cover his ass with Jimmy. And Jimmy needs to realize that as soon as that rookie is ready, I don't care what their record is, that rookie's going in. Yep. And so, are you going to just sit there and take that and wait for that to happen? Because you don't trade 3 first-round picks to sit on the bench. Like, not even the Patrick Mahomes thing. They only traded up 1 first-round pick to move up 17 spots. They traded 3 to move up 10 spots. You don't do that, without knowing that you want to play that rookie very soon.
When I look at this, we can get all wrapped up in the noise because there's a lot of noise. There's all these reports, and as the draft gets closer and closer, we're going to get even more noise thrown at us. Here's how I feel about it. What does common sense tell you? What does logic tell you? Just look at how San Francisco has handled Garoppolo really from day one. So they trade a 2nd-round pick for him, which isn't a ton. He comes in, they give him the contract. However, that contract after the first couple of years was a year-to-year deal. They can cut him right now, and it's like $2 million of dead cap space. They didn't give him a contract that handcuffed them. They didn't give Garoppolo a contract that committed to him in the long term. They were not saying by giving him that contract that he was the answer forever and ever, amen. That's not what they did with that deal, number one. Number two, the year they get to a Super Bowl, because I know when Jimmy went there and he won the first 6 or 7 games he quarterbacked, you can look back at who he played. He played a bunch of, as Dan Shaughnessy would say, tomato cans. He played teams that were stinking on the road. The best team he played, I think, was Jacksonville that year, but it was on the road. It was all of these things when you look at it and you look inside the numbers. He beat a bunch of cupcakes. Then he walks in as the starter the next year, okay? What did they do? They had a playoff game where they asked him to throw the football 8 times. Does any quarterback who was seen as the guy in a playoff game throw the football 8 times? No. That tells you that they were scheming around their quarterback. The reason why they got to the Super Bowl was not because of Garoppolo, with all due respect to him. It was because they had a great running game. The scheme for Shanahan worked, and their defensive line was obnoxiously talented, and Robert Saleh did a great job with the defense. That's what led them to the Super Bowl. And then you get to the Super Bowl, and he literally had one of the worst statistical fourth quarters that a quarterback has ever had in the biggest game of his career. On top of all of that, he can't stay healthy, and he turns the football over a decent amount. So you tell me, right? Everybody wants to tell me about why San Francisco is madly in love with Jimmy G and how they're going to commit to him this year. I ask you why. Like, on the field, there is no tangible reason. The way they've handled this guy from the very beginning after trading for him would tell you that they saw him more as a placeholder than a franchise quarterback. That's what they have seen him as. That's what he is. And that's why you trade 2 future first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and you swap picks in this year's first round to move up to 3 to draft a quarterback. It's because you don't believe in the guy. And if Jimmy Garoppolo, Greg, can't figure that out, then he's the most naive dude that's ever walked this planet, or as you said, he just doesn't care. He's fine where he is, Bay Area, lean back, kick back, put the feet up, and just have another season out there in San Fran.
Yeah, Nick, I understand I understand the storylines that are out there on why San Francisco should why they shouldn't trade him and all this stuff and why they should keep him and they budgeted for this and like I get all that stuff. It's not it makes sense, okay? And I get it. But at the end of the day, this is not it's not tenable for this season. Like unless you and we've even heard like who was it? I think it was the Eagles or no, it was the Jaguars when they drafted Blake Bortles in the top 10. They said we are not going to play. We're not going to play him as a rookie. He's going to sit. What happened? He played as a rookie, which was probably the worst thing for him. But you know, when it comes to this stuff, um, when it comes to the 49ers and why I think at the end of the day, I think they're going to wise up. I think they are going to trade him at some point is because it's not tenable. Like you can't, and I know there are some issues. I know some of the veterans on the team, like whether it's Kittle or Juszczyk or, you know, whoever on the offense, they want Jimmy. They believe in Jimmy. But at some point in time, that rookie from the number 3 pick is going to be there. He's going to get all the media attention. Everyone is just waiting. It's going to make Jimmy uncomfortable. It's going to make the locker room uncomfortable. Like, you know, make a decision if you're Shanahan and Lynch. Like, and look, I think a lot of this is just posturing, and I don't think they're trying to necessarily posture Belichick. I think they're just like looking at the situation for a couple weeks, and I know the Patriots aren't in a rush to do anything, but it's just that is not going to be a good situation. If Lynch and Shanahan want to keep their jobs, they need to crap or get off the pot one way or the other, because you're going to get in a situation in training camp during the season where we're going to get shots of Justin Fields sitting on the sideline waiting for it. I mean, and trust me, Kyle Shanahan is a guy who thinks that just about any type of quarterback can run his system as long as they're tough, have a little bit of mobility, have some accuracy. Like they can, it's not complicated. Okay, it's not a complicated system. It's Shanahan makes the system work, and I agree with him. I love his system. I think it's very quarterback friendly. So, like, why wouldn't you just go get somebody like Gardner Minshew and draft the quarterback? You save $24 million. You pick up a second round pick, or say maybe a future first, or what have you. You know, from the Patriots, whatever the compensation ends up being. I just don't understand the need to they could have worked out a deal with Belichick beforehand to get all this stuff done. It's just odd that they're putting on this facade. I don't know why they're playing hard to get. Maybe Belichick hasn't been returning Shanahan's phone calls or what have you. They'll see each other at the Alabama Pro Day this week, so that should be interesting. But if they really think they can go with Jimmy and this number 3 pick next year, they are completely fooling themselves, and it is going to implode to the point where they are last place in the NFC West again, and they're both looking for jobs.
Again, let's talk common sense. Let's talk business. When you look at the deal that was made, when you move up and you give up what San Francisco gave up to get to 3, a couple of things. I don't think you're making that kind of earth-shattering deal because they gave up a ton, Greg. I don't think you're giving up that much to draft a guy that you're going to sit for a full season. I just don't see that happening. I just do not. As soon as Garoppolo has a bad game, what's going to happen? As soon as Garoppolo stumbles for a quarter or two, people are going to be clamoring for the new shiny toy in the toy store. Secondly, these first-round picks, they're worth their weight in gold, and you know this because of the contracts. You get 5 years on that rookie deal. Now, here's the thing. We say 5 years, but really you get 3 years, because when you draft somebody at number 3, you best damn well know who that player is before May of his 4th year. Why? Because you have to okay his 5th-year option. So San Francisco has to make a decision based off of whoever's going to be at number 3, and we could talk about that in a minute. Whoever is going to go number 3 to San Francisco, the 49ers have to make an evaluation and decision on that player after his 3rd year in the league. They have to look at him and say, okay, we're either going to give him an extension, which is happening now, Deshaun Watson and Mahomes and Jared Goff, which was a bad mistake, and Carson Wentz. I would think Josh Allen will soon get his extension. These deals, these rookie deals, usually after the third year, if you're a quarterback who's been good enough, you're going to get your extension. You're going to cash in. So that means San Francisco has to make up their minds within 3 years. You think they're going to give up one of those 3 years to play Jimmy G, a guy who they haven't believed in? Like it doesn't make any sense. As far as number 3, because I want to get into our other teams of threat against the Patriots, and inevitably, would the Patriots make this move, and what would that look like? But first, Greg, who do you think it could be? I don't know if you have any intel. If not, just your guess who you think San Francisco moved up to 3 to get. Do you think, because there's been a lot of smoke, Chris Sims, Mike Lombardi, a lot of people bringing up Mac Jones. Do you think it's Mac Jones at 3, or do you think they bring in a guy like Trey Lance who they would have to work with for some time?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nick, and I don't think it's Mac Jones. I don't. There's not enough upside at 3 in the draft for me. I mean, you probably know what his ceiling is, and you think that he can be pretty decent. I mean, look, if you think he's Tom Brady, then you absolutely draft him. Could he be that? I guess. But to me, in terms of the whole, I mean, Trey Lance probably has the highest ceiling. Like you said, it could take him longer because he basically didn't play this year. I don't know. I think it's Fields. I think that his mix of athletic ability, arm strength, smarts, toughness, things like that. I just think he's for that team and that system. I just think he's the whole package. I mean, I could be totally off on this, but from the people that I've talked to, the scouts I've talked to, they really like Fields, and I think he would be a perfect fit for the 49ers, and I think he could play really early in that scheme.
All right. So what does this do in your mind to the Patriots? Because we've talked about the idea of them possibly moving up to draft a quarterback. I know some people look at this and they say, well, the San Francisco move hurts the Patriots because they would have to give up even more than we thought they would have to give up. But then you also look at the Miami Philadelphia trade, Greg. And, for Miami to move from 12 to 6, it cost them a future first. So I don't think it's that crazy if you go off of that deal. It's not crazy to think the Patriots could trade 15 and a first next year and get into the top 7 or 8. But overall, do you think that San Francisco Miami deal makes it less likely, even less likely, that the Patriots are going to move up to draft the next guy?
Yeah, I didn't think it was likely before. I think it's less now. I think it is cost prohibitive to me at this point in time. And look, we've talked about it before. There's a quarterback tax. There's a top 5 tax. It's a little bit going from 6 to 12 is different than going 13 to 3.
Right.
And so it depends on how high the Patriots would want to go. And who knows? They're going to be at pro days this week. The coaches are out, including we saw Belichick at Miami. Of course, people are going to completely overreact to Belichick being out there, especially at Alabama. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, Mac Jones. Yeah, I mean, but he was at Miami yesterday. So was he looking at a quarterback there? Like these are schools with good football players.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to scout, good football players. And Florida later in the week. I just don't think it's. I've always doubted that. I think the best thing for the Patriots, the best plan for them, and I think sort of where they were going in any event was what we've talked about before, sort of like a quarterback in the second round, late first, second round. And I think you do that with even if you get Jimmy. I think the plan should be, we'll see whatever happens with Cam. I mean, where's he going to go? It's not like he has a job. I mean, if somebody else wants to come get him, they can trade him, and I'm sure Belichick will be like, look, if something comes up and you don't want to be here or whatever, we'll deal with it. But look, the Patriots trade for Jimmy. That's the ideal. Cam's the veteran backup because who knows, when Cam or when how healthy Jimmy stays. And I still think you draft the young quarterback of the future because you never know with Jimmy. And maybe you get him back and you see him in that role more, and you're just like, no, he doesn't hack it. He chokes at the end of games. He gets hurt too much. He's always going to be hurt. He's not tough enough. He doesn't play through injuries, things like that. And you just say, you know what? But at least you have a plan going on. But we'll have to see what happens.
All right, so if it's Jimmy G, right? Let's circle back. Let's get to Jimmy G and whether or not other teams are interested. You look around the league, maybe Chicago with Andy Dalton might be interested, but again, now you're paying $35 million for the quarterback position. I don't know if Chicago is in that area to do that. Washington with Ryan Fitzpatrick would be another team that could be interested. The Denver Broncos, John Elway. Are other teams a threat? If Jimmy G is officially put on the trade block, and let's say the Patriots are interested, are other teams a threat to New England?
I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance that a team like New Orleans, even though I don't think they're a serious threat at the end of the day. Not only what they've invested in the quarterback position, but and people will say, people like Felger will say, "Oh, forget the salary cap." This is really a time when they're leveraged to the hilt as far as the salary cap. There's really no other moves that they can make to get Jimmy at close to his current value under that cap. There's just no. I don't think there's any chance. I think if as far as like real suitors that could be involved, I think you have to look at the Panthers because they're so desperate for a quarterback. And now with these trades, they might be on the outside looking in.
Let me cut you off for a minute, Greg. Is Jimmy G an upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater?
Yes.
Okay.
Way better. Yeah. I mean, and trust me, they're done with Teddy. They've seen enough. They saw enough at about midseason. Okay. So, and plus you have people in that front office who have been in New England who know Jimmy, who were around when they drafted him and things like that. So they have intel there on Jimmy.
Great point.
I think that Carolina's a threat. I think that Washington is a threat. But I think at the end of the day, when you're Don Yee and you're the agent, you have to look at all these scenarios. And yes, Chicago, Denver, those teams will come up. But when you're Don Yee, you have to go to Jimmy and you have to look at the situations. You have to say, look, you're going to be 30, okay? Your next. Let's engineer this, but you're only going to get one shot at this, okay? Because the Patriots traded you, even though that was different circumstances. The 49ers said you're not good enough, and we're trading 3 first-round picks to get your successor. And now, if you go to someplace else and it doesn't work, then you're screwed. What's the best situation? Chicago, Pace and Nagy are closer to getting fired than they are to winning the Super Bowl. Like this is it for them. If they don't win, they're gone. They almost just got fired. Vic Fangio, there's a new GM, George Payton, came into Denver. If Fangio doesn't win this year, he's probably not back next year. The Washington is a circus all the time. Now, if you're looking for stability in terms of a place that's going to give you what you need to grow and also stability at the coaching position, you have to look at Carolina and Matt Rule, but that's a place that will always be looking for their franchise guy. I'm sure, Tepper, the owner, is going to be everybody's ear, like Jimmy's fine and all, but we need to get the guy, that sort of things. But to me, at the end of the day, for Jimmy to be successful, it's no contest that it's coming back to New England with now they have restocked the roster with Belichick, with McDaniels, where for 6 glorious quarters you lit the world on fire. Come back and do that again. To me, it's no contest what the best situation is for Jimmy. What
is he worth? If you're the Patriots, what are you willing to put on that table for Jimmy G right now?
Great question. And you also have to look at it from how does San Francisco save face?
Right.
Because they can't. I think it's got to be what New England got in return. It's got to be a second round pick. It's got to be somewhere there, maybe like a second. And if San Francisco is really being a pain in the ass, then you give them like a conditional 5th or what have you. If they're really being difficult, I might flip the bird at them, tell them to go screw, and good luck with that scenario that you have working out where, you're going to replace Jimmy where he's 8-0. And that's the thing. Jimmy has to realize that even if he plays great, to justify what they did, and you also talked about the contract, like you don't trade that much not to get the full value of the rookie quarterback contract. That's the
Yep.
whole appeal. Not
Yep.
having a $25 million caddy. That's the whole appeal to the thing. You say, all right, we're going to go get the guy. We can save money there for 5 years or what have you, and we could build the team around. That's the path to go. And they're congrats on them being bold, but you don't get a $25 million backup. And so I think that's all part of the conversation. But I think it's a second round pick, maybe another conditional. If they're really getting horny and Belichick really wants them, maybe you go conditional first round pick next year because the Patriots figure to be good and they just say, all right, well, fine. If he starts 16 games, we'll give you a 2022 first round pick. Like, we don't think he's going to do that, but that's possible.
That's too rich for my blood. I'd be willing to give them the compensatory pick in the third round. Maybe you could talk me into making that a conditional second, depending on if he plays, 14, 15, 16 games. Maybe I slide it up to a second. But I mean, listen,
That's fair.
We know what he was last time when he was dealt, right? Like everybody was buying into the hype. Everybody was talking about, oh, Tom Brady's pupil. And, he learned under the tree of Belichick. And you just see the 6 quarters that he played that you mentioned. Well, now we know. We have a lot of film on him. And I am not the biggest Jimmy G guy in the world. I'm really not. I think he's average. And I might even argue he's average at best. Now, with the New England system and stuff, maybe they coach him up. Maybe he's better. But from what I've seen in San Francisco, he turns the football over too much. He's not very good at reading linebackers in the middle of the field, which is kind of interesting if you're going to try to attack the middle of the field like the Patriots look like they're going to. He's been injured constantly. He can't stay on the field. And when he's been put in a big moment, he has either been not asked to be the guy or he's failed. So I think I'm drawing the line at a compensatory third. If he plays 15, 16 games, that can slide up to a conditional second in 2022. I'm not going to give too much for Jimmy G. I think people are more in love with the name than the player. Let's get to the BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day. Check them out. Yeah, I'll try that again. Check them out over at BSJ for 11 cents a day on their annual plan. Not only do you get top-notch analysis of all the Boston Pro sports, if you're a Patriots junkie, obviously you are. A membership at BSJ gives you access to a ton of video analysis Bedard does on the coach's film and direct access to him in weekly chats. Here is the question today, Greg. And there's a little bit of a preamble here before. I'm confused how Steve Belichick and Mayo are losers from this spending spree. You just gave them a boatload of talent. Right now, they must be like kids in a candy store putting this defensive talent to use. They're only losers if they suck at putting it together. Are you suggesting, Greg, that past defensive coordinators have been able to cobble together great defenses with less talent than they've had the last couple of years?
A little bit. And what he's referring to is I did part of my column this weekend was I did winners and losers from the Patriots spending spree. And I put Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo as the losers or one of the losers because they're completely on the spot now. Like they basically got the skate. So after the 2018 season, they win the Super Bowl, Brian Flores leaves. It's Belichick and Mayo basically combining to be the defensive coordinator. And in 2019, for about 12 games of the season, they were like the greatest defense in Patriots history. And then they completely crapped the bed down the stretch, including they got run off their own field in the finale against Ryan Fitzpatrick and the 5-11 Dolphins that cost the Patriots a first round bye in the playoffs. So that happened. Nobody really said anything. It was the first year, what have you. The offense wasn't good, all that stuff. Then last year, the defense slipped even more. And we understand, like the front seven due to opt-outs, injuries, youth, what have you, didn't work out. So there wasn't a whole lot of pressure, put more pressure on the secondary. We get it. But the defensive coordinators didn't exactly make chicken salad out of chicken bleep, last year.
Right.
And so now my point is now they add all these guys. I mean, they completely reconstructed the front seven. I mean, they have a whole new defensive line with Lawrence Guy. They have Kyle Van Noy's back. They have Matthew Judon. They have, they should be able to move their safeties wherever they want. They have, Kyle Duggar in year 2. They have Adrian Phillips in year 2. They have, right now, they have, Gilmore still on the roster. There is no excuse why this defense should not be great this year. And so that's my point. My point is those coaches, in my mind, have not proven anything. I think they are on the spot. I don't think this defense is going to be as good as people think it is. And I think that the coaches are going to get a lot of pressure.
So there you have it. Mayo, Steve Belichick in the crosshairs. We're waiting for Jimmy G. Let's see if it happens or not. This is the story that will never die. He's Greg Bedard. I'm Nick Cattles. It's the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review. That's how we continue to do this podcast. Tell your friends and family about it. We'll be back next time, talk more about the Pats and whatever else happens in the NFL. Until then, be good, be safe, and be healthy.